My ancestors came to the Wallace Plantation right after slavery, probably in the next 5 years. And some of my family lived here. Well, I had an uncle that lived on the property until the 1970s. And then I had another cousin that lived here until around 1990, 91. It's more common than most people would think. They were not slaves here. However, I have friends in the community and people that have come back for events whose ancestors were enslaved on this property, and a lot of them live closely.
My great-great-grandfather is the person who founded the house, and it was built in 1841. It's been in continuous possession of our family. The house had been vacant for probably 50 or 60 years. I rather unexpectedly inherited it, and so that's when Theo and I began conversation in earnest about what to do.
What could the house mean? Will there be a new purpose for the house? How can the house help the community?
Migratory Ataraxia is an opportunity to explore the enslaved existence of Africans in antebellum plantations. When we go to these antebellum spaces, plantations, the house is already performing whiteness. Docents are talking about the material culture, the silverware, the china, the drapes, the furniture, all from Europe. And there's no acknowledgement of labor, other than there were servants. And so that really sparked our curiosity, and we started to pull in a scholar from Bates College, visual performance artist, Michaela Pilar-Brown was working with us.
And something beautiful happened here too, because we spent so much time talking to the community.
A number of the items in the installation are things from this community. Photographs from this community, books from this building, from this family, cotton picked in the fields behind this house, items that resonate with the history of this place.
And that felt like it was really something that kind of anchored the project differently. I mean, we have a set show, but just depending on how the audience's vibe is, we work off of that completely. And so I think they have to be really ready to just kind of let their guard down, and it's not going to be like being in a theater where you sit back and you just visualize the performance.
It's not just about you watching the performance, but the performers watching you. The other audience members watching you watch the performance. You watching everybody. So everyone is a witness and everybody is a part of the performance. And that can be intimidating for an audience. So you have to really find how do you engage them and not push them away, but engage them and welcome them to be more participatory in the experience. And not particularly that we want you to jump out and dance with us, but the idea that the emotions that maybe we have are okay. It's not, in essence, built to make anyone feel any particular kind of way, but it's built to enliven those enslaved Africans' existence in a concrete way and in an imaginary way, because some aspects of it we don't know. So we have to imagine what was possibly a part of their humanity.
We also had to talk about not just the terrors of slavery, but the humanity of it and how those people were able to survive. They loved each other.
I think a lot of stories about enslaved Africans have to do with their bodies, what happens to the physical body, but very little about, how they live, how they love, what happens to their spirit in these spaces.
And we never get that narrative, that humanized narrative of the enslaved individuals, that they could not have survived unless they had love. We can all come together and really see how the elements of slavery set the foundation of connectivity and humanity for the survival purposes in these worlds that we live in that are very much about erasure.
Where do Black bodies matter? Do they matter? And in what spaces do they find sort of confidence in their existence. And so this idea of like we needed to make a performance or make something that reflects the spaces where we're not seen.
What does it look like to witness someone else's grief? And how open are you to feeling that grief? And does that start a conversation that allows people to bring their histories together and then share a narrative as opposed to having two very oppositional narratives?
For me, I'm originally from Alabama. This is a homecoming of sort for my company, our company. We've been sort of exploring Southern life and sort of Black existence in the South for the last 15 years and making work about it. Southern life and Southern existence is legitimately a part of the American landscape. The Civil War that happened, it fractured our nation, but it's called the United States. We're still one nation.
This piece has elements of reaching back to reach forward because we still deal with elements of plantocracy in our contemporary existence.
One night, they pulled audience members to sit down. Of course, the dancers didn't know who the audience members were. They pulled Nell sat. Then they pulled one of my relatives who had never been here. They had her stand, and then they pulled a descendant of one of the enslaved people to sit. So Nell was on one side of the table. The descendant of one of the sharecroppers was on the other side, and the descendant of the enslaved. They didn't know how powerful that was to me, but they had brought all of them to the table, and that brought tears to my eyes.
Well, it was a truly emotional moment for me, from the first moment when they were beginning with the music and the rehearsals, to have music come into the house again, because it had been vacant for so long and had had no life for so long, that this was a beginning. And then, bringing the embodiment of Black presence to the house, which it had never had. I mean, it actually, of course, had. The house was built by enslaved people, and people worked in it for many years, but that had never been acknowledged in the narrative. And so what we're trying to do in Klein Arts and Culture is to change that narrative and to make it a truly shared narrative and shift it through what we do. And there couldn't have been anything better than Migratus to have done that.
I think it is incorporating the total story. It means a lot for healing, for conversations.
And preservation with a purpose means for us that it's not enough just to restore the house. It's not enough just for it to be on the Alabama Historic Registry, which it's been on since the 1950s, I think. We aren't restoring the house. We're stabilizing it and leaving it as it was in the early 20th century. So it's never going to have, the creature comforts. And we want it to be raw, and we want it to show sort of how things were. This is about the patina. If you can see walls behind here, it's about the patina of the walls. And the last layer is wallpaper that was put in the 50s. And then it goes all the way back to the original, plaster. So we want it always to be seen as, you can see there were layers of history and there are layers of meaning in this house. And we're adding, I guess, a new layer of meaning by the work that we're doing here.
The Wallace House, Klein, is one of the landmarks in Harpersville. And so everybody talks about the house.
And there's something really important to me about doing it in a rural setting, that you can have this interdisciplinary arts experience that's fully engaged, and it doesn't have to be in a city. It can be right here in the community.
And we are going to change the narrative. We can change what we have as our small sphere, and that's what we're working on.